Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and tonight I'm going to be going into some more detail about things that relate to the system of Enochian magic, form kind of a backdrop of it, that help us to understand some of the deeper spiritual significance of that magical system. So specifically what I want to talk about is the idea from Christian prophecy of the 144,000 and how this idea of the 144,000 is referenced in the Enochian magical system, and how the Enochian angels seem to have as their agenda, if you will, a calling out through the wisdom that they dispense throughout the earth of a select number of people to gather together in God's name and spread God's message and perform much the same function as the 144,000 do in the book of Revelation. And so I'm going to explore that idea a bit more, how it's also the idea of the 144,000 is expressed in more New Age kind of terms in today's day and age. And I'm going to be looking at the elements of the Enochian system which point us towards this idea of the 144,000, chief among them the Sigilum Dei Aemeth. So I've spoken before about the Sigillum Dei Aemeth quite a bit. One of my videos from about a year ago on the Sigillum Dei Aemeth has been getting a lot of attention recently because of a post by a certain UAP whistleblower who used to work at the Pentagon. And maybe that's why you are watching this video, and perhaps not. But I want to talk more about the Sigillum Dei Aemeth now, because there is a deeper significance to it than what I've already spoken about on this channel. I've spoken about the angelic names that appear around the circumference, the different layers of it, the rough kind of symbology of having the sigillum in an Enochian magical ritual. And tonight I want to look more at the sigillum as a tool which represents consecrating something to God, and how it's something that predates Enochian magic and inspires Enochian magic, and actually goes all the way back to Scripture. So looking more deeply into the origins of this Sigillum Dei Aemeth. So in terms of the origins of the Sigillum Dei Aemeth, although it was communicated, its details were communicated to Dee and Kelly by the angels, and Dee and Kelly, in their scrying sessions with the angels, devotedly wrote that down to design the final detail of the sigillum. The overarching symbol of the sigillum is actually something which comes from much older ceremonial magical texts. Dee and Kelly, after their angelic scrying, simply added information to the sigillum that wasn't there before. So before making its way into Enochian magic, the Sigillum Dei Aemeth, or sigil of the true God, actually appears in an older grimoire known as Liber Juratus, or the Sworn Book of Honorius, where it is described as the seal of the true and living God. The major difference between the seal of the true and living God of the Liber Juratus and the seal of the true God of Enochian magic is that around the circumference of the seal in Liber Juratus, rather than it being the 40-lettered name of God that gives the 8 great names of the powerful angelic forces that I've spoken about before, the circumference and the letters of the circumference in the Liber Juratus seal are actually derived from the Shem Ham Forash, something that's very important in Jewish mysticism. The Shem Ham Forash, or the 72 names, come from the first letters of the book of Genesis arranged in 3 rows, and then that allows you to get 72 3-lettered names, which are very sacred names. And these are the kinds of angelic spirits that are worked into the circumference in this earlier Liber Juratus version of the Sigillum. And there's some other kind of names of angels that were pretty generic for medieval theurgy and ceremonial magic at the time. Much of this material was then replaced after the angelic communications with Dee and Kelly with far more powerful and mysterious angelic names communicated through those scrying sessions. But this seal of the true and living God that appears in Liber Juratus actually has an even older origin. It in fact first appears in the book of Revelation, where it is described as the seal of the living God. Now, we don't get to see what the seal looks like in the book of Revelation. It's never described in that much detail, but we are told in Revelation chapter 7 that the seal of the living God was given to a select few in the last days in that vision. And in Revelation chapter 7, together with Revelation chapter 14, the ones who are sealed with the seal of the living God are described by a different name, the 144,000. So who are these 144,000, and why 144,000? Well, the book of Revelation describes how God sealed 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. From the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000. And the reason why there's 12 tribes of Israel in the first place is because 12 is a sacred number. It's a number of sacred order. That's why there's also 12 signs of the zodiac. And so 12 by 12 for 144 is like a multiplication of the holiness of the 12, and then timing that by 1,000, which is 10 by 10 by 10, a number of completion and a great number, shows a multiplication of holiness and a holiness in a great quantity. That really is what is symbolized by the number 144,000. And this 144,000 appear at Mount Zion, the modern day Temple Mount, which is where the temple once stood, before the Lamb. And the 144,000 are taught to sing a new song before the Lord. And they are purchased from among humankind and offered up as an offering of the first fruits to God. And the way that the 144,000 are sealed with the seal of the living God is kind of like a literary foil to the other group of people, which is almost everybody else on earth, who are also sealed in the book of Revelation, but they are sealed with the mark of the beast, 666. They take the mark of allegiance to this worldly system of control rather than to God. And so that is the kind of dynamic that is being set up in setting apart the 144,000. Now, the predominant reading of the 144,000 is the mainstream Christian reading, and quite often is some kind of modern reading of scripture, such as dispensationalism. And so we get this focus on the 144,000 as like this elite group of Christian missionaries. And, you know, that's kind of like the extent of it. But actually, if you look at the background of the 144,000 and some of the things that are being referenced in that, it actually goes a lot deeper than that. And the little things that are being hinted at in the symbolism of the 144,000 actually point to some of the most rich and beautiful and hopeful prophecies of the Bible that appear in the Old Testament, beginning with the fact that these 144,000 come from the 12 tribes of Israel. In St. John's time, there were only 2 tribes of Israel that were still living in the area of Judea. Those were the Judahites, obviously, and the Levites, the tribe of Levi. All the rest of the 10 tribes of Israel had been exiled by Babylon. Only Judah and Levi had returned to the Holy Land. But the prophets spoke about a time when the other 10 tribes of Israel would also return in the last days. Not only that, but those from among the tribe of Judah who had been scattered into the nations and whose identity had been lost would rediscover who they truly are and be called back to the Lord as part of this ingathering of exiles is really what this was, so that all 12 tribes, all people from all 12 tribes who wanted to reinvigorate the relationship with God that their ancestors had would return. And so it's really a prophecy about hope, about God demonstrating the depth of his love and his dedication to keep his promises to those who have made a covenant with him, even after thousands of years of exile, by restoring the 12 tribes. And it's also that the fact that these are coming back is like an inspiration to love God that others might follow. The fact that they have found God again in the depths of their exile is such a powerful testament to the strength and enduring nature of that relationship between God and those who look to God from among the human race. And related to that, this terminology of the 144,000 being the first fruits offered to God, this is a reference to the Torah, in which the firstborn of every family and the first fruits of a harvest would be offered to God. The firstborn would be given over to God's charge. The fruits would be offered to God as a sacrifice. And this practice was really about giving the best of us over to God. And so, the very holiest people are being given to God as an offering, that the best should be used for God's purposes. And it's also, again, a symbol of hope, because in this giving of the first fruits, this practice in ancient Israel, it was, well, for one thing, it was placing faith that God would provide. There would still be enough after what was given of the best because of God's goodness, but also that God would give back in spades what had been offered to God. That the very thing being offered would be given back to the people, only multiplied. And so if this 144,000 are offered up to God as the first fruits, and they have this unique, close relationship with God, dwelling in perpetual holiness, then that is a sign that the rest of humanity will soon follow their example, and the rest of humanity will dwell in that perpetual holiness in the presence of God. And again, we see a similar idea in relation, again, to the ingathering of the exiles, given in the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 20, where it says, "The nations will offer up the lost sheep of Israel back to Israel as the grain offering was given at the temple." And this is a verse in the Bible which is often quoted by people in relation to the converso phenomenon. I've spoken about the conversos here on this channel before, which is part of this phenomenon. And if you've watched those videos, you would know why this is such an important topic to me. So again, we see a repetition of the themes that appear later in the book of Revelation. And so humanity offers up the tribes of Israel who are able to fulfill their purpose as a kingdom of priests, to serve as an example of godliness and living a life that is dedicated to God. And as a result of that offering, the rest of humanity is then able to come to God and be inspired by the example set by those holy ones who are the first fruits, the 144,000 in the book of Revelation. And they are given a new song to sing before the Lord, which is repeating words from the Psalms, We're really singing a new song is a metaphor for a new kind of relationship being forged with God, and a new way of loving God coming into the world, because the old ways were no longer sufficient. And so there is some new way of relating to God that is being spread throughout the world by this 144,000. The Christian view of the 144,000 doesn't go as deep as that, unfortunately. It usually just focuses on the fact that the expanded Israel, or the spiritual Israel, is the church. These are Christian missionaries who will save souls in the last days. They can kind of be seen as God's vanguard, bringing people to God in preparation for the arrival of Christ descending back down to earth. And then in modern spirituality, this idea of the 144,000 has taken on a new meaning again. In New Age circles, the 144,000 are referred to as the 144,000 chosen ones, who are supposed to have incarnated on this planet from higher dimensions, perhaps other planets, for a very special life purpose, which is to help raise the vibration of the planet, raise the consciousness of the planet, and usher in the coming of the new earth. And so that's the way that the 144,000 idea has been given new life in the New Age modern spirituality of our times. But what does it say about the Enochian system of magic, that this idea of the 144,000 is referenced by the seal of the true God, among other things, but let's focus on that for a moment. What does that mean, that this seal of God is included in the Enochian tools, in the Enochian rituals? Well, in Liber Juratus, the purpose of the presence of this seal of the true God, or the true and living God in that case, is to consecrate the whole magical work that is being undertaken to God's purposes. And it's the same with the Sigilum Dei Aemeth in Enochian Magic. And what is the purpose of Enochian Magic? Well, one of the big purposes of using just one part of the Enochian system, the tables of Logger, is to communicate with the angels in order to determine true religion from false and damnable errors. And what is true religion if not the way to live a holy and godly life? And so, if the angels were to give us the way to live a good, godly life, and that communication came about as the result of magical work that was sealed by God, then if we live according to those teachings of those angels, would we not also be sealed by God as well? If we integrate those teachings so fully into our lives that we live our life by them, would we not also be sealed? And would we not also become like the 144,000? And I think the answer is yes. I think that the Enochian magical system was intended as a magical system to be worked in a very specific time, which was the end times that are described in the Bible, and the lead up to those times, and to connect us to the angels in order to be guided through that, divinely guided through that period in history. And so when we converse with those angels using Enochian magic, we are invited to be like the 144,000, and we are reminded that we are incarnated on this earth at this time for a reason, and it is to create that new earth. And you know, this idea in the New Age movement of the new earth, again, comes from the book of Revelation. Well, it comes from Eckhart Tolle, but Eckhart Tolle got it in turn from the book of Revelation, which refers to the new heaven and the new earth. And as part of the new heaven and new earth, there's also a new Jerusalem that descends down, which has 12 gates for each of the 12 tribes, the same 12 tribes of Israel that are the tribes of the 144,000 sealed ones. And Dee himself had a vision of the New Jerusalem with the gates of the 4 watchtowers and various banners, and relating to the 12 signs of the zodiac, which were associated with the 12 tribes of Israel in Western esotericism. And so Dee as well was aware of this coming New Jerusalem, that this was one of the things that the angels were trying to usher in and that they were trying to call human beings out of humanity in order to help them do that. The angels told Dee and Kelly that the teachings that would be received as a result of the Enochian workings, the teachings from the angels, would be an instrument of thrashing. This is a term to do with the threshing of wheat. To gather together the faithful under one banner and separate the faithful from the unfaithful in the final days, in preparation for the arrival of the kingdom of God. And much the same language was used by John the Baptist to describe Jesus as a thrasher who would separate the wheat from the chaff in preparation for the imminent arrival of God's kingdom. That was Jesus' expected role as well, as we learn in Matthew chapter 3, verse 12. So again, we see this theme of the imminent arrival of a transformed earth and the need to gather together people who want to reconnect with God, and using a new teaching in order to do that. And seeing that linked to the book of Revelation, and also seeing that linked to different elements of the Enochian system. And really, when you understand deeply the symbols of Enochian magic, such as the Sigilum Dei Aemeth, and you understand the full context of the Enochian system and why the angels have revealed it at this time, you understand the responsibility that it puts upon us when the angels give us a message. It's not just, it's not just another occult tool to mess around with, just for fun. The angels are trying to give us divine guidance and ultimately gather us together in order to transform the world. And there won't be many who choose to heed God's call. But what does not attach itself to the things of God, things that are eternal, will ultimately perish as the things of the world perish, and as the destructiveness of the things of the world and the ways of the world ultimately backfires on itself and brings it all crashing down around it. The angels have given us an alternative, and it's time for us to start taking that alternative seriously and start listening to the voice of God in our own lives, particularly considering the times in which we live. So that is the note that I would like to leave this video on. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel to support my work. If you want to support me further, you can buy merch at my merch store. I'll leave a link in the description below for that. And you can also hit join or thanks down below. Oh, and very important, I did a podcast recently for the Hermetic Podcast. I appeared on that talking about some things to do with Enochian angels and the UAP phenomenon. So I'll add a link to that down below as well. All great things that you can check out to support me further. But thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.